Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today we are going to be doing a little speed build. If you aren't caught up with my Origins Legacy Challenge, I would highly recommend that you watch that first so you can get all of the background that you need for this build. Otherwise, let's jump right into it. This is going to be a smaller version of a rich manor. This is going to be Jamie, Remington, and Mandy's house, but Remington is not going to be here very often. So I'm just building on the lot that their caravan was already on. I feel like that's easy. It's close to Donald. Jamie would adore it. I used this picture that I'm going to pop up on the screen as a reference picture. I was searching specifically like 1800s manor, small, rich person house in 1800s style, and those kinds of keywords. I don't know if it's super historically accurate, but I think that it looks like it fits in, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I couldn't do everything exactly the same, obviously, because of Sims. You have to have everything be like exactly a Sims block wide, but I more just took it for inspiration. I also had to do something really janky here, as you saw, where I had to make 3 different roofs into one roof for it to work, but I think that it turned out pretty well. Also, this little room upstairs is non-functional. You can't get up there, but it's cute. It adds to the outside of the build. This porch was so hard for me. I actually cut out a bunch of time that I spent trying to finagle this porch. I ended up doing something a little bit different from the picture, but I did like it. And I actually made it into a wraparound porch a little bit later on. And I thought it would be really cute to have this blue color, again, using that picture for inspiration. But I just feel like this is Jamie's house, you know? It's Remington's money, but it's her house. And I really quickly realized as I was building the inside of it, I wanted it to be that rich aesthetic, but I didn't want it to be that deep red and brown kind of colors. I wanted it to be a little lighter and airy and blues and golds. I started with something that was just too stuffy for my liking, and I didn't think that Jamie would like it. And don't worry, I noticed that these windows are not lined up with each other, and I do fix that. So you don't have to worry about that. It is coming. So let me talk a little bit about this house and why I'm building it. This is technically Remington and Jamie's second house. Remington still has his job as a civil servant in the bigger town, but this is kind of going to be their country home where Jamie can focus on her art and all of the whims that she is looking forward to. So Remington's not going to be spending a lot of time here the way I see it. I don't know what the future of their relationship holds, but for now, this is primarily going to be Jamie and Mandy's house. Mandy's going to go to school here. I kind of have the feeling that Remington thinks that it's good for her. Maybe the town that they come from doesn't have any other kids, or maybe he just likes the idea of her being able to be in nature and play outside more. I don't know, instead of these stuffy old buildings that she's used to. So let's get inside the house. I do edit the outside a little bit more later on, and I'm always constantly messing with that roof, which is hilarious, and just trying to get it at the exact perfect height that it can be at. I just kind of deleted all the walls and slapped down these saucers so that I could see the canvas I was working with. I also added that wraparound porch, as I mentioned, which I think looks really cute. It's not really functional. It's too small to be functional, but I think it's pretty cute. And then I went about dividing these rooms. I actually did look up an 1800s style floor plan, and they all have this front little entryway and then a parlor or sitting room just off of that where you could host your guests without them having to go into your main living room. And then I put a hallway, and then I ended up changing this main space that I'm working on now. I divided it a little bit better into rooms that actually made sense, into a living or a sitting room and a main dining room, and then a kitchen and a study/library. Upstairs, I did another hallway, and then we have the main bedroom, the ensuite bathroom, Mandy's room, and Mandy's bathroom. And then this room in the middle that I was originally going to make into a sitting room, but decided to actually make into a playroom for Mandy. So as I mentioned, this is the entryway foyer with a little table. I didn't want the rooms to be too big. I really do want it to be a small version of a manor, kind of a little more cluttered and cramped. It's their second home. There's kind of a lot of weird art and sculptures. My canon is that Remington is kind of throwing a lot of his random statues and things that he owns into this house because he doesn't know where else to put them. So it's a mix of that and then Jamie decorating. I put art over all of the walls. And this is where I thought I was gonna go for like a darker wood throughout and a deep red color. I also looked at pictures and a lot of these old houses had just carpet throughout the entire house. So I was looking at doing like a deep mahogany or red carpet. And I started with that, but then once I moved on to that little sitting room or hosting room, I didn't like it. I didn't think it was Jamie, and I decided to go with a light blue theme instead. I spent a long time playing around with curtains, but I ended up doing these big old money thick curtains, how they always used to cover up all the light that they would ever have in their houses. I put some tea in here, a little side table with some tea, because obviously if you're hosting people, you have to offer to pour them a cup of tea. Some little flowers around this area too, just trying to make it a little more girly, give it Jamie's touch a little bit. And obviously we had to put some old paintings on the wall. Yeah, and here's where I changed the color of the carpet to be like a lighter blue instead. I'm really happy with that. I think it looks a lot better. I also just made sure to put all of these wall sconces throughout the whole thing. I think that makes it look really old-fashioned. And here I'm doing one of my first gallery walls. I just really wanted to lean into all of this art and these collected pieces because that's Jamie. That's her whole thing, is that she's an art lover. And that's also the justification for why she's moving here. So it has to be realistic. This is, as I mentioned, like a formal dining room. I don't think they'll be having 4 people at that table, but just in case. And the living room, and then this is the library / study. We had to do some bookshelves in here. I had to shrink them down because these bookshelves are massive. I don't know why they're so big. And I also thought about putting a bar in, and then I was like, Jamie's not really, I don't see that for her. You know, that feels like a Remington thing. She probably wouldn't need that in the house that she's mostly spending her time in. It doesn't have a lot of Remington's touch. Again, it has his old artifacts and stuff that he's storing, but it's more of a girly place. And then I put up this little china cabinet and some plates on the wall, just genuinely looking for anything that looked antique-y and old that I could put up. And I love these little tea things. I don't think I've ever used them in any build. So this was a perfect chance to get to do that. I used a picture for reference for this kitchen as well, just because I was like, I have no idea what a old kitchen looks like. I barely spend any time in my own kitchen. And they all had this like random table in the middle of the kitchen that they would prepare food on. I guess it was before we had islands. They would just plop a table in the middle of the kitchen. So that's what we did. Also, the kitchens weren't really pretty. They weren't a place where anyone ever hosted. It was just kind of a food preparing area. So I didn't really spend a lot of time on the wallpaper here, but I did plop down some paintings because obviously I was trying to do that in every room. I don't think Jamie has ever cooked a meal in her life, so this is going to be really interesting to see how she does in that kitchen. Also, this was so annoying because tell me why the top end piece doesn't line up with the bottom end piece in the kitchen set. That's part of one set. Like, that should line up with each other. Anyway, yeah, so I just kind of am using the kitchen for extra storage too. Hanging up some herbs. I actually did end up buying some little planters to go outside on the porch and some herbs that I put in the household inventory so she could have some herbs to cook with if she wanted to try that. Just working on cluttering up the walls. These old homes had so much clutter on the walls. They had clutter on the ground. They had all these little tiny tables just holding random things throughout their houses. So I did that. These coat of arms that I put in here were very Remington coated. Again, he just needs some place to hang them, and Jamie is putting up with it. And I also think that they look really badass, so I was fine with it. And then I went through and just added some clutter to the whole build and some flowers, another little tea set, and some cookware in the kitchen. And I think it's looking really cute. I really like how this is turning out. It did take me a really long time, but well worth. And as you can see, my money situation barely went down during this build. And I thought I bought some pretty unrealistic random stuff, like the giant suit of armor in the front sitting room. Also, if you caught that, a fish statue, that's a little homage to Donald because Jamie likes fishing with him. Again, blocking out all of the sun that we possibly can in the hallway. And let's move on to the upstairs. For the upstairs main bedroom, I actually decided to go with kind of a green and gold theme instead. And I wanted to do a little bench seat here. So this one, literally, the couch was called like old laying couch, lounging maiden couch or something. And I was like, that is perfect. Let's pop that in. Some more curtains, a bunch of windows. I actually don't know how these windows look from the outside. I didn't really pay attention to that. But yeah, I wanted this to be a little sitting room. And then I realized that this would be our third sitting room. And although that's realistic, that's not really what I wanted out of my build. So definitely a better idea to give Mandy her own little playroom. For Mandy's room, I actually downloaded some antique CC. I think it's called Antique Nursery is the set that it comes from, but it has stuff for a kid's room too. So I did that, gave her her little model train and her bookshelf, a little rocking chair and her bed, and obviously one of those teddy bears that all of my kids are tending to have in this challenge. And I think her room is cute. I think it's very Victorian. Like, it's a little creepy, but it's also a little cute, so I'm okay with it. And I went full in on this. When I went to buy toys for her, I only bought the carriage and the horse toy. I was like, perfect. And the little cottage living rug to top it all off. For Mandy's bathroom, the bathrooms were actually really hard for me to do. I think it's just because they were so weird. Like, look up an 1800s style bathroom or a Victorian style bathroom. They're weird, but I think what I ended up doing turned out really cute. Just popping up a little table again. They had so many random tables, I swear. And I kind of copied what I did. I have this little partition for her bathing area. I feel like that they would definitely have that. Yeah, I don't know what color story I really went with in the bathroom. They were just so ugly. All the ones that I saw online were really ugly. I couldn't pull a lot of good inspiration from that. But I think this turned out okay. I did end up trying to make it a little cuter with some towel racks and cabinets and stuff. And then I also added a little cluster of candles by the foot of the bathtub, which I just think is so cute. I can imagine Jamie taking a little bath and looking out the window and enjoying her night. So I think this turned out pretty cute. The wallpaper that I ended up using in Jamie and technically Remington's bedroom is very gaudy, very over the top. I don't know, it kind of fits. Like, when am I going to get to use that kind of stuff? Probably not for a while until Kira and Saul have enough aspiration points to buy a money tree. Now is when I realized that I have a lot of wall art in my game, but most of it is pretty modern. I kept seeing like the gallery walls that they have from businesses and hobbies, and none of it was really fitting the vibe because they didn't really have stuff like that. It doesn't work in this build. And the old style paintings, there aren't really that many of them, especially if you want to clutter the whole house with them. There's probably like 10. So you kind of run out of options at a certain point. So I did download some CC that was old antique artwork. I don't think I'm able to link CC on YouTube, but I will shout out the creators in the description. And I think that this is so cool. This one came with, there was 4 different frames, a landscape and a vertical in a big size and a small size. And then the pictures you would just place into the frame and then you could toggle through. There was like 30 options for each picture that you could toggle through. And it was so perfect. So I did this in the upstairs hallway. And then I also went through the house and just looked at anywhere that I could find a bare wall and popped some of these paintings down. There was also another one I downloaded that I used two that wasn't those ones with the frames, but I ended up loving both of them. They worked out really well. Now I'm doing Mandy's playroom, and I had to give her a dollhouse. For some reason, the dollhouse that's titled Victorian dollhouse is super modern. So I got her the Princess Castle instead. And then I got her a toy box, a little activity table. Oh, quick break here too to get the typewriter and a chess table for downstairs, because I totally forgot that of course they would want a chess table, and so I had to kind of squeeze it in the living room. But I actually like how it ended up looking. That cluttered kind of look is very much so accurate to the times. And Mandy also knows piano and violin, so I had to get her one of each. I'm shocked that this piano fit in here. It was looking a little squished, so I just extended the room a little bit, and I feel like that's great. She's got plenty of room to play with her dollhouse and her piano and all her little toys. And I put those two toys that I talked about earlier on her shelf in her room. Just some little pictures, bunnies and animals and stuff. And then I added a little bench to the outside with those pots that I talked about earlier and some herbs that I put in the household inventory. And then I just pulled out a bunch of outdoor activities that I thought we might want and kind of set them off to the side. At one point I pulled a telescope, and then I second guessed myself and I was like, wait, they wouldn't have that. But I think that they totally would. I don't know. So I didn't do the telescope. And then I realized that the house was facing a really weird way. I have such a bone to pick with the fact that The Sims doesn't put the path right up until where the lot starts. Because tell me why this path just ends in the weirdest position no matter where you face the house. It was annoying me so much. And so I just ended up facing it out towards the river because I think that makes the most sense. I think that they would want to look at the river. And I kind of tried to lead it up to this path. It doesn't look right, but that's okay. Also, now watching this back, I think that the flowers were a little bit overboard. So I might have to go in and make that grass a little more realistic. But I got the wash basin and the laundry line and a little fire pit with some chairs and also horseshoes. I also got a tree house. Here's me adding some lights to the outside of the house, and of course a little bit of plants. I didn't go as crazy with these plants as I did with some of my past builds, as you've seen, but just added a few to make it look a little bit more realistic, and I think that it turned out really pretty. And so here is the full build. You walk through, here's that little main entryway and the sitting room, and then if you walk through on the other side, you have the hallway with the gallery wall and everything that I designed there. The living room right here, or parlor or sitting room, and then here is the study / library, and then the formal dining room and the kitchen. I'm super proud of how this turned out. I think it looks really cute. I love all the artwork all over the walls. And then if you go up the stairs, apparently you launch into the sky. But if you actually go up the stairs, here's all the artwork that I put up in this hallway too. Here is the main bedroom. You know, the wallpaper's kind of growing on me. It's a lot, but it fits the room. And here's the main bathroom with that beautiful clawfoot tub. Looking back on this, I think I need to add a few more curtains too, specifically in that upstairs bathroom, the playroom, and of course, Mandy's bedroom. And Mandy's bathroom. And that is the whole build. Here is the house in all of the different times of day. I think it turned out really cute. And the craziest part about this whole thing is they still have almost $400,000. I hope that you enjoyed that speed build. I'm not the best builder, but I do find it really enjoyable. It just takes me a really long time. There were a lot of parts I had to cut out of me just like picking over a curtain I wanted to use for like 15 minutes. I'm really excited to get into the game and play with these families and play in this lot. I don't know what I'm gonna do about my rotational gameplay because I usually just play with our 4 founding families. I think I will keep doing that, and if we want to, we can add in the Beatty family to the rotation, but I do think that we'll be seeing them a lot just as they live in the town with us. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that you'd like me to add to the build. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Definitely go check out my Origins Legacy Challenge if you are not caught up, and I'll be posting a new video in that series soon as well. Please like the video if you like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great rest of your day. Bye!